Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of It Is Ma'am with Mel and Kay. And as you can see, hi Kay, and hi special guest. As you can see, we have a very special guest today. I'm so unbelievably excited. She is an actress. She is an author. She is exactly Kay. She is a chainsaw artist. She is a bona fide rock star and a living legend, the neon angel, the cherry bomb, Cherie Currie.
Oh, Mel and Kay. How sweet. Thank you.
Such a privilege to be talking to you this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. I told you that I listened to your memoir and I feel like I've spent so much time with you. And I think I'm just so I'm so girl crushing.
Oh, Mel, that's
You're
so
such
sweet
a
of you. Thank you.
badass. First of all, chainsaw artist, like what? How did that come about?
Well, things in life, I consider it a fluke because I'd gone from being a sketch artist. I became a sketch artist when I was a counselor at Coldwater Canyon Hospital for adolescents, and I had to sit in class with them for a couple of hours. So I grabbed some colored pencils and I started to do these whimsical things. And my manager at the time, Rick Frio, he took me to Price Stern and Sloan, which is a kid books company for young adults, and I went there as an artist. And when they asked me how long I've been drawing, and I said a year, and they said, well, how is that possible? I explained to them the Runaways and the drugs, and got out of that. And they said, wait a minute, we're looking for our very first young adult book and we think this is it. So I walked in as a artist and walked out an author. And because of that book, which came out in 1989, that spawned the movie, The Runaways, that came out in 2010. And I made that young adult book an adult book, where I could, tell the stories in more depth for adults.
So there are two books?
Well, yes. I mean, the original paperback, I actually bought Price Stern and Sloan out of all those books back in 1994, I believe it was. And then when the movie came out and I rewrote the book, that came out through It Books, which is an arm of HarperCollins. And so that came out with the movie. And then they put a paperback of that book with a couple extra chapters.
I see.
So there's really three books.
Well, there was a lot in there that wasn't in the Runaways movie.
No. And of course, they take a lot of creative turns here and there. I really don't understand why they didn't use more of it. And they bent the truth a little bit here and there for sure.
Well, there's an entire Netflix series. Your life is an entire Netflix. I want 10 episodes. I want more. First of all, Kay, I didn't know this, and you probably don't know this. And I mean, you put it in your book, so I assume it's okay to bring it up. But Cherie was kidnapped by a serial killer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I did not know that. That's horrifying.
It was. I mean, I was at the Sugar Shack, which is actually where I'd met Kim Fowley and Joan Jett as well. Underage teenage club. You had to prove you were under 21 to get in. And I had a lot of friends. I just left the Runaways at this time, and I was in the parking lot. I had the guard that I knew very well. My friends were surrounding me, and this guy in a green limousine, good-looking guy too. I mean, he wasn't some creepy looking guy. And he pulled up and he goes, Cherie, how you doing? Long time no see. And I guess I was such a people pleaser back then that even though I didn't recognize him, I didn't remember him, I was always kind. And he asked if I wanted to jump in to see the inside of his brand new limousine as he pulled around a park. And there was something in me that just, that voice, girls, that voice that tells you, not a good idea. I should have listened to that voice, which I strongly listen to now. I got in and he was pointing at this and that and the other thing. And I was looking out the window, noticed he had parked past a couple of parking spaces, and then the electric locks went down and he went just right out the driveway, and that was it. And that was the beginning. That was about 11 o'clock at night. And it wasn't till about 4:30, 5 o'clock where I had talked him into taking me to my girlfriend's apartment. And for me to get close, to go back with him. I mean, he was really mentally disturbed. Yeah, claiming that I'd lived with him in Dallas, Texas, and me and my corset and all that. I mean, the guy beat me within an inch of my life. And one thing that, and I ended up stabbing him as well with a knife. I mean, and he's very lucky because had it been a butcher knife that I found on that counter, I at that time, I think I just would have stabbed him until I couldn't lift my arm anymore. I mean, the man was the most brutal, awful killer, and he had confessed to killing 6 women while he was in the process of just destroying me physically and mentally, you know. So he had me for
Was he
several
caught?
hours. Yeah. He was, because when I got to my friend's apartment, even though I had blood all over me, and I mean, this guy was looking at me like I just walked off a runway. You know, he was waiting for me to grab a few things. And I knew at this time, because I'd left my purse there, had no identification. My twin sister, who had come to pick me up, knew something bad had happened. And I knew that my friends would be out looking. And my friend Andy Raffles, who I'm still friends with, believe it or not, all these years later, was there at the apartment waiting. And I knocked on the door, and as soon as he saw me, I mean, I just fell into his arms. I was so physically destroyed. And I said, he's downstairs, and he grabbed a flashlight and a knife, and he ran down there, and he got his license plate.
Wow.
So by morning time, the police had me in their car and drove me to the house where, you know, I guess the license plate gave them the address. And I said, yes, that's the house. And so it did go to trial, but he pleaded guilty. He did a plea deal, pleaded guilty to sodomy by force. And they had everything else was dismissed. And he got a year in county. And we know what that means. You know what, maybe 3 months, 4 months, something like that. Yeah.
And he
Can I ask
didn't.
you if you had some
Go ahead.
advice, you know, to people listening in that have been through something similar to what you experienced that day? You know, how do you recover from that? How do you put yourself back together again?
Well, you know, there was a gal who had been kidnapped by an insane murderer over here in Los Angeles, in the Ventura County area, and he ended up hacking her arms off, and she survived. He had hit her with such a blow that it cauterized her arms, so she was able to nude walk on a street, and somebody stopped, of course, and saved her. And she is the one that really saved me, because I saw that if she can survive, who am I? I mean, my God, and all the women that have died at the hands of these crazy, you know, rapists and murderers, that if she can continue on with life, I was going to continue on with life. And I consider myself very lucky, because 6 women didn't survive this man. So that was an easy call for me. I was very, very grateful just to be alive.
Yeah. That wasn't in the Runaways. That didn't make
No.
it.
No,
Oh
no,
my
it didn't.
God. Yeah, so that was I'm sorry that happened to you, but your story of resilience is amazing. And I love, yeah, I love what a strong woman you are. You're an inspiration for others for sure, you know, to keep
Oh,
going.
thanks, Mel. Well, you know, I mean, life is not kind. Yeah, it's tough. And the thing is that it's a test, I believe. And what we do is we take from our mistakes, because it was a mistake for me to get into that car. And that voice telling me, don't do it. I didn't listen to that voice. And so I strongly suggest anybody that it has any inkling that something it doesn't feel right or comfortable, follow that voice. You know what? Hurt some people's feelings. Do it. You know,
Yeah.
no is
Yeah.
a good thing. Because
100%.
yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask you, that experience that you've just described to us, does that play a significant factor into why you've joined the TERFie movement? I know we're coming to that story to find out how you got involved in the kind of gender debate, but do experiences like that play any kind of role?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I don't live my life as a rape victim, but one thing I do know is the difference between right and wrong. And there are some things that have happened in my life. I mean, like the Runaways, where, of course, there really weren't men. I mean, there weren't women in this highly male-dominated business. And also the chainsaw as well. You know, I picked that up. That's mainly a male-dominated business. But this thing with kids, I mean, it's absolutely evil. And I can't explain the drive, but it's as powerful as anything else I've done in my life that and I've succeeded in. I mean, it's a calling. And what they're doing to children, they're just very lucky that they didn't start doing this 30 years ago, because when my kid was a couple of years old or kindergarten age, because they start them really from kindergarten through grade 3, that's when kids are they're just doe-eyed, beautiful little souls, so innocent, and they can be coerced into believing anything. And that's what I don't understand. I mean, because we've all been kids. I remember when I was 8, 9 years old, 10, 11, 12. I mean, we weren't thinking about sex. I mean,
No.
why are they bringing up gender? I mean, you know what? All we're thinking about is, we're not even thinking about boyfriends. I mean, it's just, we're just playing. We're just being children, you know, and for them to inject this kind of insanity into these kids' lives, making them question whether they think they're girls or boys, is absurd. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you again, if I there would have been blood in the gutters, man. There would have been some heads rolling, because I don't think I could contain myself if I would have been confronted with something like that when my kid was little. I mean, just it would have not ended well for them. I guarantee you that. You know?
Yeah. So how did you figure out, because I know like mainstream media, they say things like, oh, they're not doing these surgeries underage. And we all know that they are. The WPATH Files came out and confirm everything. And
Yeah.
how did you find out what was going on?
I can't even tell you when or how. It's probably been a couple of years. I think during COVID, as well as when I started to see online about these kids, especially, well, with X, you know, before Elon Musk took it over, it was very highly far fringe left.
Mhm.
And all of these kids with the different color hair, and they're demanding pronouns, and they're demanding this, and I was like, wait a minute, what? You know, what the heck is going on here? I don't like anyone demanding anything of me personally, because I would never demand anything on anyone else. So it just seems so forced and so bizarre, that they would be that they would feel that they had that kind of strength behind them.
Yes.
And that's what I think really shocked me and said, wait a minute, I got to look deeper into this. And the more I started to read, and you know, the little documentaries these kids make about their transitioning, and then I saw the photographs with the breasts removed, and I got to tell you, it looks like I did it with my friggin' chainsaw. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, just straight across with a, you know, a scar that wide. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking of it.
nipples optional. Or
Yeah,
they charge extra or whatever, and they're all misplaced in a weird size and don't look the same.
I would have been better. I would have done a better job with my chainsaw than what some of these doctors have done. And seeing these kids happy, and I know for a fact they're not going to be happy. You know, I mean, because they're being coerced into this, and you know, feeling a part of, you know, this transgender community, protecting them, but really what they're doing is absolutely destroying their lives. And life is long, and it's hard. And what also really got me were the lies that they were telling these kids, you know, and telling the parents as well, that, you know, would you rather have a living daughter or a dead son? Things like that, that just, you have no right to say something like that to a parent.
Emotional
And
blackmail.
exactly. And then I started to get mad. I just wanted to choke these people, to be honest. I mean, there a fury that came up in me that just is indescribable. And also, you know, another part of me feels that, you know, some of these parents, you know, they want to be the cool parents on the block. You know, maybe there's a little Munchausen's by proxy involved there, where they're getting all of this, you know, admiration for standing up for their children. And really, I mean, their children are looking to them for what's right and what's wrong. And the parents have been had. They've been had, and their
Yeah.
kids are going to grow up. And also, I watched as well the surgeries. I watched a transition surgery, man to woman and woman to man. And I sat through those things, and I have to say that the results are not good. Failure rate of 100%, aesthetically very unpleasing. And these doctors, they really need to be held accountable now for what they're doing. And it should be the last thing they're thinking of. Once you hit 18, and I still think that's too young, because I got these stupid implants at 28 years old, and I never would have done it had some very close friends of mine hadn't turned around who had breast implants when I was a fitness trainer, and I was a lot of muscle, and turned around and said, "Oh, you don't, ew." And it was like, what? You know, and that just started this insecurity in me that would allow myself to have breast augmentation, which I have hated from the minute I did it. I hated the idea before I did, but I did it anyway. And that's what comes when you're insecure. And they're grabbing these young kids that are insecure. They're afraid. They don't know. They're trying to find out who they are. And these nutty teachers and nutty social workers and these school boards are hiding this from parents, hiding it, and, you know, allowing the child to change their name, where they're called, whether, to Timmy, when she was Diane or whatever. And then they actually do that behind the parents' backs. And that's when I knew it was sinister. That's when I knew that there was something so insidious about this, that because it's just damn wrong. It's wrong on every level. And it's just such a relief to see the UK banning these puberty blockers. And
Yeah, best news we've had in a while. Yeah.
yeah, so important. And again, I mean, the puberty blockers are different from the hormones. And there's a great gal, Luka Hein. I met her on X, and she had her breasts removed at 16. That she was having some mental problems, which a lot of young people do. And the first thing they went for was, we think you're a man in a woman's body. I mean, who does that? I mean, who does that, really?
I know, a
And
monster.
a monster. Exactly. They're monsters, these people. And she had her breasts removed, 16 years old. She is now detransitioned. She's in her early 20s, but she's the one that's speaking out. I mean, the one video that I've shared on X, I'll tell you, I mean, she's just a hero to me. She's the suffering, just the physical suffering that she's been going through from these hormones that have caused her joints to hurt, her vocal cords are they ache, her vagina, is atrophying. And usually, a lot of the times, like if you look at I Am Jazz, Jazz has never had an orgasm. You know what? Sorry, I hate to announce it to the world, but you know what? Those kind of things are pretty important.
Yeah.
And she's never had one because they started her at 9 years old. I mean, what kind of nut does that? What kind of nut thinks that a 9-year-old can decide who he or she is? And I truly believe probably 95% of these children, it's a fad. I went through it. I love David Bowie. I dressed like him. I started, I saw women that way, but I realized that it was a fad. I grew out of it, and had
Do you
that
find it
happen to me.
interesting that you were talking about having your implants years ago, and that being rooted in an insecurity? And I think every kind of generation will have their version of that. So it's kind of like we all were young in a time when the beauty standards were just completely unattainable. We were looking at Cindy Crawford and all these, perfection examples of women. And now it's like, oh, we're not trying to attain the unattainable. We're just going to escape right out of our body instead. I'm not going to have everything tweaked and beautified. I'm just going to leave the building altogether, escape my very soul and try and become something else. It is just absolutely terrifying. But can you imagine being one of these kids, getting put down that route of transing at 9 years old? You hit 19 and realize, oh, actually, I would really have loved to have had intimacy in my life, and my stupid parents took that away from me as a child. I would have actually quite liked to have had biological children, but my parents took that away from me as a child. It's just deeply disturbing. And I can't believe so many people have still got their eyes closed. They just aren't looking. They're just not looking at what's right in front of them. Anyway, that's my little rant. Back to you, Cherie.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And I can't even imagine the regret, the deep-seated regret that these parents have to feel when they see that their child made a mistake, and that they made a mistake. And all they had to do is just leave it be, but, again, there's an army behind this trans movement. There's an army, and they're the people that are supposed to be teaching our kids how to read and write and math and history. And you know what? They suck at it. All right. I mean, teachers these days, schools, education is in the toilet because all they care about is this social experiment. And our kids are dumb. I mean, you know, they are. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
I don't even have a 10th grade education because I mean, I think it was 3 months into the 10th grade where I was pulled out to go on the road with the Runaways. But I have more smarts than kids that have gone through college because our teachers back then, first of all, we never even would have considered or even thought about what our teacher's sex was or whether they were gay or straight or I mean, that was just off limits. Kids didn't ask and teachers didn't tell. And now teachers are just you know, I don't know. They're getting away with not doing their job and destroying our kids, our kids.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
disgusting. You know, I keep mentioning because I was a child development major before I switched to psychology, and I took a lot of the classes, but even if I had just taken the first one that's required, it's just child development one, that class alone is enough information. And all of these people took that class, but it's enough information that you know that children cannot consent to this because you understand the brain development. You understand when the prefrontal cortex comes along, and it's many years after childhood. Like you can't,
Yeah.
they know better. That's the sick thing. And I wanted to circle back to the orgasm thing because it's crazy. The whole thing's about sexualizing these kids, but then you take the pleasure away. What the fuck kind of twisted shit is that?
Yeah.
That's like an
And
extra layer of sick.
well, you know, I, I mean, to me, and again, being a mother, you know, my kid scraped his knee. I was in tears to allow a doctor, a team of doctors to go in and cut Layla. I have a new pup that I just adopted, so they're kind of figuring it out, the two here, my two dogs. But you know, to Layla, now I'm forgetting my thought.
You know what we
Menopause
call that
moment.
on this
We have
show?
one of these.
We call
Yeah.
that menopause moment.
Yeah, and you know when you talk about menopause as well, I mean, you know, I refused any hormones or anything like that because I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And plus, I haven't dated in 12
Yeah.
years, so who gives a damn? But you know, now I did Dana's show this morning, the Dana show, and her aunt, you know, developed cancer after all the hormones after she had gone through menopause. Hormones, I mean, this is uncharted territory, and to do it to the most innocent and oh, I mean, it's so heartbreaking to me. And sometimes I just literally, I just am so awestruck that they have done this and they did it secretly. If it wasn't for COVID, we never would have found out.